Well, hello friends, and welcome to my sacred circle. I went ahead and cast a protective circle before doing today's video, because this is the first episode in my Tales from the Haunted Victorian series. And I have to tell you, I've told many of these stories for my entire life, and sometimes when I do, strange things tend to happen. So I wanted to go ahead and cast a sacred circle, burn some sage, light some incense and candles, and ask for protection and guidance as I recount this tale to you. Many of you have already heard the tale of the well that we found in the backyard of the Haunted Victorian, but if you missed it, I'll leave that video linked down below so you can check that out as well. Before we get started, I just wanted to say that these are the true events that happened to myself and my family when we lived in this house. And I really don't have time for skeptics or people who try to explain away these events. These are our experiences, and I'm simply recounting them to you. So, since this is our inaugural episode, I wanted to give you a little bit of the history and the layout of the house. So this was a late Victorian house that was built in St. John's, Newfoundland in the year 1902. And before my parents and my older brother moved in, it actually belonged to my father's family. And they too also have experiences with the haunting, as do people that live there after us. So on Samhain Eve in the year 1979, my mom, dad, and my older brother moved into this house after living several years in a cramped downtown apartment. And I wanted to start by giving you a little bit of a layout of the house so you can imagine these things happening for yourselves. When you come up the front walkway and up the front steps of the house, there are two doors. We had a storm door and a heavier wooden door, and that led into a small porch area that was about 6 by 6. And then the porch was closed off from the rest of the house by another door that was wooden, and it had a window in the door. And funny enough, when you would open and close the door, you could hear the plexiglass rattle in the frame, so it was a very distinctive sound. So after coming through the porch, it led into a quite large foyer area, and off to the right hand side you would go through a large archway into the living room. Off to the left side of the foyer went into what we call the playroom, and that was really the parlor, and it had an old cast iron wood burning stove in there. And then when you walk through the playroom, it led into the front entrance of the kitchen. Back in the front foyer, if you look straight forward from the porch, the steps went up off to the left, leading to upstairs, and if you walked straight next to the steps, it led into a long hallway to the back porch and into the back entrance of the kitchen. If we back up a little bit, if you go off to the right hand side into the living room and turned, it actually opened up into another archway that led into the dining room. And then if you turn again, the dining room had a door that led into the hallway that was next to the steps. So if you could walk completely around the main floor of the house, and I used to spend many a day running around through all of the doors, and you could do so without ever meeting a wall basically. And then from the foyer area, you would go up a large staircase that led to a landing. You would turn and go up another staircase that led to the second floor. And once you get to the top of the stairs, it too had a very large kind of upstairs foyer area, and it had 4 doors on either side, with the bathroom kind of straight ahead and off to the right a little bit. So that kind of gives you a general layout of the house, so you can keep that in mind as we go through these stories. So I've decided to split up all of these tales into small chunks and tell one per month until I basically divulge all of the information that we experienced not only in this house, but what I also experienced throughout my life as a spirit medium. So this story I've decided to call The Angry Ghost. Now, for the most part, the experiences that my family had in this house were never overly negative. My mom always said that she was never scared of the haunting in this house because she said, there are ghosts. But when other people decided to come to the house and had experiences, they would very quickly make their exit and would always say that they would never go back, and some would never go back at night. So on this particular night, there had been a lot of drinking, eating, and merrymaking, and my father's brother decided that he was going to spend the night at the house as it was very, very late, and he didn't want to make his way home after probably having a little bit too much to drink. So he decided to stay, slept on the couch in the living room, and he would get up in the morning and make his way home. So just to give you a little bit of an idea, the couch was against a set of bay windows, very large bay windows, and in front of the couch was a coffee table. And this was one of those 2-level coffee tables. So you had your feet, and then there would be one tier and then the second tier on top. There were no doors, it was completely open. And at the time, my parents had a full encyclopedia set on the bottom tier of the coffee table. And if you went to the other side of the coffee table, that sort of led out into the room. And this was a very, very large living room. Keep in mind that this house was built during Victorian times, and they tended to have large rooms for entertaining and was nothing like the rooms that are in modern day homes we have now. So this was a large room, like I said, and so if you're lying on the couch and facing out into the room, it was probably 20-25 feet before you would hit the archway that went into the dining room. So like I said, my dad's brother was lying on the couch in the living room, and my parents, of course, went on up to bed in their own bedroom upstairs. In the middle of the night, my mother and father heard a large bang come from downstairs, and my uncle screaming and hollering. Thinking that maybe someone had broken into the house, my father ran downstairs to see what the commotion was. And he found my uncle standing in the living room, wide awake and white as a ghost, surrounded by a huge mess. So my uncle recounted that he was sound asleep on the couch, and some unseen force had flipped the coffee table completely across the room and scattered books everywhere. Now keep in mind, like I said, this is a very large room, and this table was completely on the other side. So this wasn't anything like a leg gave out or somebody bumped into it. This would have taken a massive amount of force to get this table across the room in one push. So even though my parents had never experienced anything sinister in the house, it seems that one of the entities didn't like my uncle staying there very much. And indeed, he fled the house that night and said he was never going to return. So after this happened, my dad set up the coffee table again and lined up the entire encyclopedia set on the coffee table. And he himself, and he is a very strong man, had difficulty moving this table. So whatever entity was in the room at the time had to gather enough strength and enough energy to be able to flip a table across a room that a grown man wasn't able to do. Now, what I know of poltergeists and spirits, they gather energy from their surroundings to be able to do things like this in the physical world. So whatever entity was in the room at that time had to have hated my uncle enough to be able to gather that much strength to scare him out of the house. And keep in mind, this was my father's brother, so he would have lived there when the house belonged to my father's family. So who knows, maybe there was an entity that was in the home, and this entity wanted to scare the wits out of him so he would never come back to the house. So that wish from beyond the grave came true on that evening when my uncle ran from the house in the middle of the night. And that's the tale of the angry ghost. And until next time, sweet dreams, everyone. Bye.